President Biden delivered what the White House called a major economic address just hours ago in Maryland. Though the president continues to claim the economy is doing great and Bidenomics is working, the White House is growing frustrated that poll numbers don't reflect such claims. Now, the Biden administration wants voters to ignore that inflation has wiped out savings and instead cheer for the CHIPS Acts or investments in green energy. But American voters recognize the president's policies have created this situation. 58% blame the president's policies, according to the latest CNN poll. All right. But what does the consumer price from August tell us, price index from August, tell us about the current economic conditions? And what trends can we detect to forecast future conditions? Well, joining me now to talk about this from the Heritage Foundation is Joel Griffith. Joel, welcome back to Washington Watch.
Hey, thanks for having me tonight.
So give us an overview of what the August inflation numbers tell us.
Well, August inflation numbers were more bad news. We saw the overall inflation rate of 0.6%. Annualized, that's about 7.2%. And these numbers add up, these fractions of 1%. If you go back now over the last 26 months of the Biden presidency, because inflation has been so high, 21 of those 26 months, families have experienced a real pay cut because wages failed to keep up with price hikes. So all in all, we actually see the typical family income is down by about $5,000 per year relative to where it was at the beginning of 2021. And that's not even taking into account things like higher credit card fees, which are accounting for about $1,500 a year for a typical family. And of course, doesn't even account for the cost of a home if you're looking to get a new mortgage.
So, Joe, let's talk a little bit about whether or not the Biden administration is cooking the numbers. From a standpoint of, we're seeing almost every time we get a jobs report that, you know, we get these headlines that created so many jobs, but then we go back, you know, quietly, you know, a few weeks later, they actually say, well, actually, it wasn't that many jobs. And so there's a claim out there that we're creating all these jobs, that the economy is going so hot, but when you look at the actual numbers, it doesn't show it.
No, you're exactly right. Almost each and every month the past year, we have seen the jobs estimates revised downwards the following month. And if you dig just a little bit under the surface on these jobs report, you find out something else that's very startling. We have been losing full-time jobs. Each and every month, the president does this victory lap about the number of jobs created. But over the last 5 months, we have actually lost well over 100,000 full-time jobs, which begs the question, why is it, how is it that we see the total number of jobs increase? Well, that's because the number of part-time jobs is increasing, even as the number of full-time jobs is falling. And that shouldn't come as a surprise to us. People are finding it necessary to work multiple jobs because they've depleted their savings. Savings rates right now are near an all-time low of 4%. And as we've depleted the savings, families have added credit card debt. We've seen families add around $3,000 of credit card debt just over the past few years. Families are strapped, they're working more and going into debt.
You know, the president today in his speech in Maryland was talking about, you know, I'm happy if we have billionaires, but we're just going to tax them more. We've seen the stock market, you know, we've heard the stock market's doing well, but even in the second quarter, the corporate profits have shown a very significant downward turn. There's several economic indicators here that suggest that the picture's not as rosy as the Biden administration would paint.
Oh, no, you're right. There's numerous pictures, including the manufacturing index, which seems to have stagnated, the industrial output index as well. If you look at the number of full-time job openings, we saw the number of openings decline from around 11 million to just about 8 million recently. And we have to recognize what has been the cause of this. Of course, the shutdowns, which should have never happened, that's a big problem. But we also saw that size of government grossly expand. And because of that, the limited amounts of capital that we have that should be invested into new research development, new infrastructure, new buildings for private businesses to produce, that has been sucked up by the government, both in terms of taxation, but also in terms of the government borrowing. And that's a big part of the reason why growth has been so subdued.
So, Joel Griffith, how should that factor into this debate that's going on right now over government funding and a possible government shutdown? We've got conservatives saying we've got to cut back on the spending. You know, the Democrats saying, oh, you just wanted to shut down government. How should this information factor in?
Well, we have to recognize that the economic malaise right now has been caused by this gross expansion of government overspending and money printing. If you look in terms of the money that we're spending each year, right now, the federal government, they're spending $80,000 per family of four each year. And what is stunning is about $25,000 of your family tax bill is actually being, or your family spending component is being borrowed and printed. The interest on the federal debt alone this year amounts to around $10,000 per family of four. And every dollar that goes to fund the government or goes to pay the interest payments on that debt, that is a dollar that could have been invested in the research, development, and equipment that would allow us all to be more productive and to earn more, not just the shareholders and the wealthy, but allows all of us as middle-class Americans to be more prosperous as well. And both Republicans and Democrats have been part of this problem. If you go back to the COVID era, those enormous spending packages were passed with broad Republican and Democrat support. And of course, the left now in Congress has made it even worse since President Biden took office.
Now, final question. We're out of time, Joel. But you know, I'm not one given to going by our feelings. But when it comes to the economy, I'm more inclined to go by what we feel than what we hear out of Washington.
No, and in this case, our feelings are correct. We know that we're spending more on our rent or our mortgage payments to fill up our car and on the food. And as it turns out, it shows up in the data. We know from the data, which tracks grocery stores, food costs are up 25%, gasoline's up 50%. And what doesn't even show up in that percentage number is the fact that if you buy a house, the mortgage payment on a typical home 2 years ago, $975. That same house today is going to cost you $2,100 per month, which means that the majority of American families right now can't even afford to purchase their own middle-class home.
Wow. Well, Joel, we'll have to leave it there. Thanks so much for taking time to join us.
Thank you. Have a great night.